I thought I would tell you a story that you might know, but chances are high that you don't. If you have ever heard it, it was probably a very long time ago and might have had a couple of takeaways or interpretations that are slightly different than mine. So this is the story of Tabitha. This story shows up in the book of Acts in the New Testament portion of the Christian scripture. Hopefully you won't click away just because I've said that. Anyway, here's how her story goes. She's a widow and she lives in community with a number of other widows because that's what they did in order to have support for themselves. And actually the story begins with her dead. Her body is being wrapped in linen and being prepared for burial. And the widows and other people who are in community with Tabitha just aren't okay with this. And they know that Peter, who is this awesome guy, is just a little ways away, and so they send for him. And Peter comes, and they are moaning and wailing and deeply upset that she has died. He goes into her room, sends everyone out, and then the text tells us that he kneels down and prays, and then says, "Tabitha, get up." She opens her eyes, he gives her his hand, she rises up, and he presents her back to her community. That's it. That's the whole story. There's nothing more to it than that, even though there's tons more to it than that. I love this story. I think it has so many ramifications for us as women. It speaks so profoundly to this experience of life and death, of the cycles of death and rebirth that we know really, really well as women. I love that about the story and the way that it encourages me in that regard. This reminder that maybe things that seem over aren't. A second thing that it offers me is this awareness of just how profound a woman's impact is. Who was she that these other women and other people in her community weren't willing to accept that she was dead? Like, that's something, isn't it? That tells us a lot about her impact on them. A third thing that I think this story speaks to is just the incredible significance of advocacy. Again, what does it tell us about her that these other women in her life were willing to go to such lengths, such extremes to advocate on her behalf? And what does it mean for us to do the same on our own behalf, but also on behalf of others? And then fourth and finally, what does it mean to recognize the presence of a miracle? Aren't you actually one already? And what if you remembered that? What if you walked through your days aware of just how miraculous you truly are? If you think about Tabitha, there's no way that she could have walked through the rest of her life the same way that she did her first life, because now she knows she is this living, breathing miracle, as are you. Isn't that awesome? I love that awareness. Now, I want to say one more thing about this text, maybe more than one thing, but let me just say this. I did a little bit of research just because I was so curious about this resurrection story. I thought in my own mind, like, how many other resurrection stories are there? And frankly, I couldn't remember that many of them. So here's what I know. There are only 9. Did you know that? Only 9 resurrection stories in the whole of this sacred text. But here's where this gets even more fascinating. Of the 9, 6 of them are either of women coming back to life, or the resurrection only happens because women asked for it, women advocated for it, women cried out for it. 2/3 of all the resurrections that happen in the text, only 9, are either of women or because of women. Now, why does that matter? Well, first and foremost, because nobody's told you that. Nobody told me that. Nobody's talking about that. Shouldn't we be talking about that? 2/3 of the resurrections, 2/3 of the reality of this level of miracle is happening specifically to or for women. Really? That feels important to me. Here's a second reason why I think that this is so important. The fact that 2/3 of the resurrections in the text occur and that the stories have continued to be told that way over thousands of years of time tells us something really profound about the lasting power and legacy of women. Despite the fact that this text has been written by men, interpreted by men, that it has been retold and rewritten and worked with a million times over the years, but these 6 stories have remained uniquely about and for women. Gosh, that seems kind of important. And third, maybe what I would say is this: if 2/3 of the resurrection stories in this sacred text are about and for women, then maybe the same thing's true about and for you. Maybe the things that you think are over actually aren't. Maybe you are that miraculous. Maybe you deserve to be advocated for in this way. Maybe you are really that worthwhile in the big scheme of things, and certainly to the divine. That's just a tiny little take on Tabitha's story, way more that I could tell you and talk to you about, but that's probably enough for now.